Hi everyone. So if you finished your Little Red Riding Hood and the Wolf and Lamb to the Slaughter assignment, then I definitely want you tuning into this video. If you have not finished that assignment yet, I'm going to ask you to go back and finish that first and then come back and watch this video to look over your work and check to make sure that you are on the right track. So let's start by looking at Little Red Riding Hood and the Wolf. And so I first asked you, how would you characterize the wolf? And so I gave four different words that I could have chosen to characterize the wolf. So something along any of these lines would work. I said the wolf is terrifying. The author describes the wolf as having sharp white teeth and a horrid grin. And the reaction from Grandma, it says she was terrified, which tells me that he is definitely scary looking or presents himself in a terrifying way. I also said the wolf was unsatisfied because just eating Grandma was not good enough for him. He wailed about it and cried around that he just wasn't full, and decided that because of that he should wait for Little Red to come home and he was going to eat her too. I also said he was crafty. He tries to be, because he dresses himself up as Grandma to try to fool Little Red Riding Hood. Even curls and brushes his hair. So he goes, he pulls out all the stops to try to fool Red. And I also said that he is arrogant because when Little Red Riding Hood comes in and they're talking, he's offended when she doesn't point out his teeth. And then he makes this statement that he's going to eat her anyway, like he has no doubt that he's going to be successful and that he has no suspicion that she is going to get the better of him in the end. If you think about Little Red Riding Hood, she's definitely not the stereotypical victim that you would expect. We never see her, being worried or concerned. She stops and looks at the wolf before she starts making comments about his appearance as Grandma. And you might think that she's fooled by that disguise until she pulls the gun out and defends herself. And then we also understand why after her last comment is about the wolf's furry coat. She's eyeing that for herself. This poem has both situational and verbal irony. The situational irony is the fact that Little Red Riding Hood kills the wolf. In the traditional story, the woodcutter comes to her rescue. She can't save herself, and we expect her to be helpless like we've always seen in the traditional Little Red Riding Hood story, but she's not. She defends herself. She kills the wolf all on her own. I also think there's verbal irony because we see Little Red Riding Hood commenting on the wolf's coat, but she's not commenting on it because it looks good on him, but because she's thinking about how good it's going to look on her. So that is a little bit of verbal irony because we're not expecting her to be wearing the wolf's cloak at the end of the story. The tone in Little Red Riding Hood and the Wolf, I said it's melodramatic or kind of over the top. We see the author using dramatic dialogue tags like the wolf wails multiple times, cried, and like dramatic descriptions like the wolf's frightful leer, to somewhat create this element of fearfulness. However, the lyrical rhyming, it's almost playful. And then the way the poem ends with Little Red Riding Hood, the one who is victorious over the wolf, makes you feel like the author was never really actually concerned that Little Red Riding Hood was going to come into any harm. So the tone itself is somewhat ironic, because, especially at the beginning, because it feels dramatic, but then at the end you realize the author probably wasn't, or the narrator probably wasn't really ever worried about the outcome for Little Red Riding Hood. If we shift gears and talk about Lamb to the Slaughter, I asked you to characterize Mary at the beginning of the story as well as her husband Patrick. And at the beginning of the story, Mary appears very pleasant. She's very docile, meaning she is like quietly helpful. She seems like the perfect obedient wife. She seems excited for her husband to come home. She has everything just so and ready for him, and she rushes to get him a drink right away. And after he's kind of silent, and you start to pick up on this nervous vibe. She is making sure, can I get your slippers? Can I get you some cheese and crackers? No, let me cook dinner, even though it's not the night I normally cook dinner. And then even after he's shared whatever news he shares with her, she seemingly offers to make him dinner still. So she just seems very pleasant overall. Patrick, on the other hand, we definitely pick up some nervousness from his character. And we can tell once he says he has something to share, he's anxious about whatever this news is. He's drinking more than he usually does. And you can sense his nervousness because Mary is also becoming uneasy. It's why she's offering, can I do this? Can I do that? She wants to ease the tension in the room. Imagery in the story, we see the author coming back to the tinkling of the ice and the glass, which keeps drawing our attention to the fact that Patrick is drinking more than he normally does, and he's emptying that glass, and the fact that the author's pointing it out, it seems like it's otherwise silent, which kind of lends to the tension. It's emphasizing that uncomfortable silence that is going on before he shares whatever his bad news is with Mary. And then we see Mary's character change. She offers to make supper, and it seems very innocent as she goes down to the freezer to pick out whatever she's going to make for dinner. But when she comes upstairs and hits him over the head with the leg of lamb, we can see that she is now coldly furious. She is cold and calculating as she murders him. She goes to the store, so she has an alibi. She goes through this she has to practice and prepare herself, but she pulls it off she has no remorse about what she did. And then the fact that she feeds the police the murder weapon, that's pretty dark and pretty cold. Irony in Lamb to the Slaughter, we see both situational and dramatic irony in this story. The situational irony is that we wouldn't expect Mary at the beginning of the story to kill her husband. She seems like she's all about making his life better and easier. So it's the opposite of what we would have expected to happen at the beginning of the story. The dramatic irony is that we as the audience know that the police are eating the murder weapon even as they sit at the table and talk about where it might be, and they're going to resume their search for it as soon as they finish eating. So we see both examples of situational and dramatic irony in this story. So one common theme that I noted is that you shouldn't base your expectations of a person's actions on his or her appearance. We see this in both Little Red Riding Hood and the Wolf and Lamb to the Slaughter, because we expect Little Red Riding Hood not to be able to take care of herself, and we don't expect Mary to kill her husband and then coldly cover it up. But that's what happens in both stories. Little Red Riding Hood kills the wolf herself, doesn't need help, she is not helpless, and Mary kills her husband after whatever news he's shared with her. We can probably gain some insight into what that news might have been after she kills him as well. And we think about this portrayal of women in literature, that in a lot of traditional stories, women are portrayed as weak and helpless and not violent, but Roald Dahl in both of these stories kind of turns that notion on its head by creating very strong women who are not afraid to be violent, to protect whatever is important to them. And so it's definitely a difference in what we usually see and how women are portrayed in other traditional literary stories. Hope you enjoyed both of these pieces, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all soon.